So I went through with the pregnancy, realizing that I had to do something. I either had to raise the child or I had to release the child for adoption. So in exploring that option, and I was able to get a lot of help counseling-wise through agencies in town, through my pastor, in different ways, and that was really cool. And at the time, open adoption was a new thing. It had only been around for a little while. There were 5 agencies in the United States that actually did open adoption in Traverse City. The agency was one of them. And so that was something that I was exploring. And as I was exploring open adoption, then because it was such a new thing, so we're talking 33 years ago, my son's 33 now, and so 33 years ago, it was a new thing and they were exploring it. So 2020 came forward and asked our agency specifically if they would be involved. And they asked the agency if there was anyone, and I happened to be pregnant at the time. And I was willing to put myself out there and get involved in that. In considering what kind of adoption I did, I would say that I don't think I considered a closed adoption. I don't personally think I could have done it. I know that there's a lot of adoptions, and the nice thing about an open adoption is that everybody can kind of make their own rules. You can get involved with somebody as much as you're comfortable and as much as they're comfortable and as much as you're both comfortable. I would not have been comfortable with a closed adoption. To know that my child was out there and to not have any idea if they were at least safe and happy and healthy, I don't know if I could have done it. So open adoption was definitely, I do remember though when I was first approached about open adoption and they said, this was on the video, it's like, okay, so I carry this baby for 9 months and I go to the hospital and I have it, and then I have it at the hospital and then I just give it away? Like, yeah, right, like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Yeah. But that's exactly what I ended up doing. Yeah. I kept, so obviously I did decide to do an open adoption, and I did keep my options open as far as, like even the 2020 people, I told them that I was not going to go ahead and make my final decision until I actually had the baby, because it's one thing to be pregnant, it's another thing to actually have the baby, and I knew that that decision was something that I would need to make after the baby was born. And so although I went ahead with the whole idea of open adoption, everybody knew. 2020 knew, the people that adopted my child knew that I would be making that decision after they were born. Well, what they did, the agency had a few families that were there. It was very interesting. They had a time when birth mothers met with adoptive parents, and that was very interesting and very, very enlightening, because they were able to see, the adoptive parents were able to see the birth mothers and that they weren't horrible people, and the girls were able to see these adoptive parents that and the struggles that they went through trying to deal with infertility and the difficulties with that. That was a very enlightening time. So there were these couples that were active in the agency at the time that were wanting to adopt a child, and what they did is they made a photo album that kind of told who they were, gave you an idea who they were and whatnot. And so I went through photo albums and had some, through the counselor, asked questions and whatnot, and narrowed it down to a family that I thought that I thought was a possibility. And so then we met, then we had a meeting. Adoptive parents and and birth mother, the relationship can be anything that the two agree upon. And we had two rules in our relationship. One rule was that any question was okay to ask, and the other rule was you didn't have to answer it if you don't want to. So those were our rules, and we went forward with that. And Don and Kathy seemed to be very happy to have me around, and we didn't have rules. We just went forward as we were comfortable, and they were comfortable having me around quite a bit. Some people with open adoption just exchange letters, just see each other on like once a year or something. Everybody's different. We lived close to each other, so we were able to have quite a bit more contact, and we did have quite a bit of contact. At the very beginning, I probably saw him weekly, and then it was probably monthly for a long time. And then when he got into his teenage years, like I say, he's 33 now, so when he got into his teenage years, then he had a girlfriend and he had a job, and he was a typical teenager, and he was busy, and I didn't really see him as much. But he's recently had a son, so I have a grandson, and that was, and I actually get to babysit. They're in need of, so my son's wife works out of her home, and she needed somebody to come into the house and take care of the child while she's working. So that worked out that I was able to do that. So I get to go and actually babysit my grandson. That's been a huge blessing. It's beyond cool. It's been, yeah. Probably from 16 until 33, able to actually connect with my son and his wife in a way that I hadn't been able to because he got busy and just, yeah, so it's been really cool. You know, a lot of people thought that picking who would actually raise your children is not necessarily something that the mother could do. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Who would be better, really? I can't really think of who would be better. When I was pregnant, I was very lonely because I was dealing with this pregnancy by myself. So I was excited to have Matt's parents in my life finally, because they were over the top excited about a baby. And so that was really cool. One of the things that really kept me going through the pregnancy and afterwards was, as hard as it was, maybe emotionally, at least I didn't have an abortion. That was just one of those things, you know, and even now, 33 years later, it can be very emotional, but to think that just at a whim, because it wouldn't be convenient for me. And now he's alive and he's 33 and he's got a great wife and he's got a great son and he's a great guy, you know. So that has always been something. And then I kept a journal after he was born to help me deal with some of the emotions that I was feeling. And I kind of perused it a little bit before this interview. And one of the things that I remember and really does stick out is the amount of love that came about because of the decision that I made to go ahead through this pregnancy and to not terminate it. You know, the amount of love that I was able to experience. I was able to love my child. I've been able to love my child from the day one. His parents love him. His wife obviously loves him. His child loves him. And he's got a huge extended family, and he's a great guy. One of the things that I would say About open adoption and adoption, it's not, at the time, 33 years ago, it was not a socially acceptable thing to do. Socially acceptable, I was 24 and I should have just kept my child and I should have just raised him. And so there was a lot of disagreement, just about everyone. In my family and my friends. I lost all my friends. It was everyone had an idea what I should do. Everyone thought it was a horrible situation. And no one could really understand when I would go out there how I could handle going out there and seeing him. But every time I went out there to see him, it just reinforced that the decision I had made was the right decision. He was happy. He was a happy boy. He's been a happy boy. He's never been an unhappy boy. He's always been confident in who he is. He's always known where he's come from. He's always known who I am. I'm his birth mother. He calls me Lynette. He's always been, he has no issues, really, as far as who he is and where he came from. And every time I see him, it just reinforces that I did the right thing. You know, sometimes in life you mess up, but then you have to go forward making the right decision. There's no option. You have to do, sometimes in life you just have to do the hard stuff. Mm-hmm. That's just all there is to it. Yeah.
And you've seen the reward of that.
Definitely, yeah. It's not easy. It's never been easy. But you know, one of the things I was thinking about as I was coming is that I now have grown children that I did birth, and they have since moved out of the house. And at some point, we all have to give up our children. It doesn't matter. Our children are only ours for a short amount of time, and we always have to give them up. And I gave up one quite a bit sooner than I gave up the others. But I've had to let them go in the same way that I had to let him go. It is just a matter of parenting. You have to let your kids go. You have to do what's right for them, what's best for them. I had a woman one time that we did a interview like this, and she could not figure out for the life of her how any woman could give away their children. How could you give away your child? And I said to her, "Do you have children?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Would you do whatever you could for them?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "That's what I did." And you could literally see the light bulb go on over her head, and she could understand how a woman could release her child for adoption. It's just what they needed. Well, God does work in mysterious ways, and for me to process everything that I was going through, I at the time was working. The time I was pregnant, I was working in a restaurant, and it was a high-end restaurant, and they didn't want to have a pregnant woman that was unmarried on the floor, so they asked me to leave, which I could have been upset about, but I ended up getting unemployment because I was laid off. I wasn't necessarily fired. So because I was laid off and was able to get unemployment, that gave me a lot of time to get a lot of counseling, and I did get a lot of counseling, and as much as was available, I got as much counseling as was available, and did as much as I could so that I could heal as a person, and so that I could make good decisions going forward, and make the right decision for the pregnancy that I was involved in. Well, one of my reasons for doing interviews like this would be a selfish reason, because I feel that the more, I've never been afraid of tears. It's like if the tears come, that means healing's coming. And, they're just, these things, they have to be talked about. They're hard. So I did take opportunities to talk, to get the help that I needed. I mean, I did. It just never stops. One of the things that was very interesting is that Matt's adoptive mother and myself, his birth mother, have found that we have shared a lot of similar feelings. And I don't want to share those because those would be maybe private to her, but it is amazing the similarities. Just one in particular that I think would be okay to share would be a feeling of jealousy. Me being jealous that I couldn't actively mother him, and her being jealous that she couldn't actually carry him and give birth to him. So just by being open, I guess, would be my biggest thing, is being willing to talk about it, being willing to talk with people about it if people want to talk about it. It's like, yeah, I'll talk with you about it. It's, life can be hard. And the Lord puts people, together and helps you deal with it. And sometimes it's just you and the Lord working through the hard stuff.